It's inevitable for many big hardware releases that there will be some flaw that ordinary consumers don't even notice and say it's no big deal, but tech enthusiasts will yell at the sky to tell them how wrong they are. Both of their feelings are valid, although admittedly some people, weirdos, do take it too far. But the thing that gets under my skin personally is when the didn't even notice folks act like it doesn't matter. It just doesn't make sense to me as someone who honestly falls into the didn't even notice camp. I rely on hard data to help me with hardware reviews because I am someone that doesn't immediately notice the same things that many tech enthusiasts may catch more quickly. For me, I typically get so into a game when I'm playing it that I might notice problems later. If I'm having trouble with a difficult boss, for example, I start to realize, oh, my timing's not off. There is input lag on this screen. But that is exactly why objective data is so important in the first place. We have tools to measure not only frame rate, but also response times and color accuracy. And that sort of hard data is not limited to display technology because we can measure temperatures and audio frequencies and fan noise. And all of that is valuable even if it's not important to you personally or if you don't notice it practically. Sometimes, like in my boss example, it helps explain something you were subconsciously trying to adjust to. You didn't know the hardware's bad. You didn't even know that you were struggling. You were just playing the game. And that is when cold hard data is most important because it helps to keep you informed and actually keeps you from being taken advantage of. Corner cutting corporations are always looking to save a buck, and whether or not they pass that savings on to you, the customer, there are going to be trade-offs to consider. So in that way, it's nice to have the option of being aware of those trade-offs so that you can compare products and see which benefits you desire the most, and perhaps more importantly, which drawbacks you're willing to live with. But lately I've been seeing this thing where people are demonizing the digital foundries of the world, acting like those good folks are pixel counting and fanning the flames of console wars with talking points that ordinary consumers wouldn't even notice, when instead tech reviewers like that are looking out for the consumer's best interest. They're pointing out things that consumers may want to be aware of even if they can't notice. Case in point, in the last week or so, we've seen a lot of discourse about the Switch 2 and one of its biggest flaws, the 1080p LCD VRR screen that looks amazing to some players and is pretty lackluster to others. In fact, I'm probably underselling that. Some people are outright condemning Nintendo for the display technology that they chose to ship with the Switch 2. Mind you, this isn't just fanboys claiming OLED superiority, and it's not just one minor thing about the display either. Objectively speaking, the display leaves a lot to be desired. The response time is poor, coming in at 50% slower than the original Switch, which released 8 years ago. Those bad response times contribute to pretty nasty ghosting, and on top of that, people have complained about subpar HDR. Perspective plays a key role here because if you're upgrading from an original 2017 Switch to a Switch 2, like I am, you're more prone to see all the improvements. The bigger screen, increased resolution, improved backlight, and brighter colors. But if you're upgrading from an OLED Switch, then the screen is only slightly bigger and the colors are actually downgraded. So there's less of a wow factor, and maybe you have a bit more of an opportunity to see the Switch 2's display in a different light. But the point remains, there's no real debate to be had because the Switch 2 has objectively poor display technology in some key areas. Numerous YouTubers have compiled the data, including Digital Foundry, Taki Udon, and most recently Monitors Unboxed. Monitors Unboxed said it is quite literally the worst display that they've tested so far, though I suppose it should be said that they typically test gaming monitors and not handheld displays. So we have objective data that the display has some major flaws, but then again, we also have some data that maybe this isn't such a big deal, sort of. Take a look at this thread from Resetera. So far, we've been talking about ordinary consumers and tech enthusiasts, but I'm going to draw a bit of a distinction and say that Resetera is a forum for gaming enthusiasts, not tech enthusiasts. These two are not mutually exclusive, of course. I personally consider myself a 10 on the gaming enthusiast side and maybe a budding 6 or 7 on the tech side. I'm curious, how would you rate yourself on both tech enthusiast and the gaming enthusiast side? Nonetheless, in this particular thread, forum goers are voting on their personal experience with the Switch 2, and this paints an altogether different picture than that of tech enthusiasts. Here, people are surprisingly content with the display of the Switch 2. If you limit the votes to people that own a Switch 2, nearly 50% of the audience says that the Switch 2 screen is at least good, and an additional 30% say it's okay. That's 80% of people that I would qualify as content. These aren't just ordinary consumers either. They may or may not be tech enthusiasts, but if you're voting on a Resetera poll, it's pretty safe to say you're a gaming enthusiast, if nothing else. I don't point this out to say they're wrong. I myself voted it's okay. Personally, I value this data just as much as objective reviewer data. I'm also not going to say that you should go out and look for problems with the Switch 2 if you're happy. Listen, if you're happy with the product you buy, I'm certainly not going to be the person to try and take that joy away. Heck no. But I think some people see the results from this poll and come to the wrong conclusion. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I don't really like this framing that just because it only bothers a minority of users, it's not important. I actually feel the exact opposite. Specifically because people may not notice, it is important to capture that data as accurately as possible and convey it to the consumer. Then the consumer can make an informed decision. Naturally, the same thing happens outside of video games. I might eat 2 different frozen pizzas that taste similar, but one has healthier ingredients. Just because I can't taste the difference doesn't mean that the distinction isn't important. Many people don't know intricate details about their washing machines or cars, but instead rely on trusted reviewers to tell them about the things that they may not be aware of. I am not able to detect a privacy vulnerability in a piece of software on my own, so I'm grateful when that sort of thing is reported. When companies release new hardware, there are always going to be choices that those companies have to make, legitimate trade-offs, like maybe they prioritize battery life over response rate, or they put a smaller battery to maintain the form factor that they're looking for. This obviously happens for every product, but sometimes they are just trying to cut costs. A manufacturer may choose to go with a cheaper component, not because it improves some other thing, but really just to squeeze a few more cents of profit. At the end of the day, that's kind of up to the consumer to evaluate. Did Nintendo make a reasonable trade-off, or were they just trying to make a buck? But the consumer can't come to a reasonable conclusion without adequate information. Without objective data, corporations can do whatever they want because they know they have a captive audience. The Switch 2 is selling at a record-breaking pace after all, isn't it? If consumers not only don't notice a flaw, but are hostile to outlets that are reporting said flaw, then what incentive do corporations have to do better in the future? They'll just charge you more and more money for lowered standards. And you better believe that each one of these corporations are using this information to their own advantage in marketing materials. With the Switch 2, they're already telling you about the vibrant colors, the large screen, and the increased resolution. And if they released an OLED Switch 2, I personally wouldn't be surprised if they talked about how they improved the display and made it faster with even better colors and better support for HDR. So why shouldn't we have that data in our arsenal too? Why shouldn't we cut through the marketing to level the playing field? What do you think? Tech Gang out. Goodbye.